Hello, my friends, and welcome to MSP Unplugged. I'm your host, Rick Smith. This is the place to learn tips, tricks, and strategies to help you run and grow your IT service business. Whether you're a one-person shop or leading a team for the journey, this is the place for you. Let me introduce you to my co-hosts who are here today. First off, we have Chicago's own Mr. Paco LeBron. How are you today, sir?
Oh, you know what I like to say, Mr. Rick. If I lived any better, it'd be a sin.
He stole my line. And joining us from Dallas, Texas, over there, from 5K Technical Services, the other spoke in this wheel, Mr. Corey Kirkendall. How are you today, sir?
Doing well, man. Doing well. Actually, on the road up in Oklahoma this week, man. Had to go visit some family, but other than that, man, doing well. Had a crazy storm last night, man. I thought the whole sky fell down, but it's all good.
Yeah, you're out there in where there's not much city, huh? So you get to see everything and feel everything, huh? No
Yeah,
buildings to
for
block it,
sure.
huh?
Yep.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I know the feeling. Before we get started here, I just wanted to remind everyone of our favorite thing that is coming up. I know it's Paco's favorite thing. Corey, it better be yours too.
No doubt. No doubt.
But we're talking about our TechCon Unplugged. Now, this year, and if you haven't heard, we're taking TechCon Unplugged on the road. It's our road tour. This year, it looks like it's a little different. Instead of just coming to us, we're coming to you. We have planned in 3 cities. We've already done New Jersey a couple of weeks ago. Our second stop is going to be in Chicago on June 20th, and that's at the Hyatt Lodge on the old McDonald's campus. Excuse me. I'm not as familiar with Chicago, so but I guess it's a nice venue there. But our agenda is going to be pretty simple there. We're going to bring you a pre-event workshop from from our friends over at MSP Camp. You guys know Tahir, making MSP marketing easy, which is the easy highest ROI first steps to taking your marketing. Wow, that's a lot to say. A live audience podcast with us discussing what we're doing now and how to improve sales and business. And along with live MSP office hours roundtables to discuss what's on your mind. We'll be discussing things like AI, operational efficiency, how to avoid tool sprawl, and open the book on how we're running our businesses to hopefully help everyone with an open discussion and gain a lot of insight. So we're hoping to see you there. Again, that is June 20th in Chicago. You can get your tickets now at mspunplugged.com or techconunplugged.com. We're hoping to see you soon. Guys, anything to add to that?
Register now to my Chicago peeps. We got to show out how we do it over here in Chicago. So if you're
Hey,
listening, register.
looking forward to it, man. Looking forward to seeing you all there for sure. It's gonna be a good show.
You know what? I'm gonna feel generous. Use my name Paco, and you get half off the ticket. Use Paco, and then that way you can let everybody know. So you're gonna get that nice little half off on the ticket. So if you're local, that'll incentivize you even more.
Okay, so don't forget, use Paco's name just to get a ticket. Doesn't get you anything else, but it gets you half off the ticket, all right? But
Hmm.
no special treatment in Chicago itself, but it will get you half off your ticket there. But before we move into today's topic, I want to ask you guys really quick, how was your week? You have a tip, trick, or story you like to quick tip, trick, or story you like to share with the audience?
It's all been gravy this week. It's been super busy, good times, good networking. It's been a lot of love over here in Chicago. So all I can say is make the most out of your memberships for your associations because you never know when that lead is right around the corner.
For sure. For me, man, I'm gonna go a little personal, man. I lost my uncle, man. He's like a brother to me. What's cool about it, man, is it's bittersweet, but it's cool because I gave him his flowers while he was here with us, man, able to celebrate them. And I tell you, man, for your loved ones, for your customers and those guys, give them their flowers while they can accept them, man, and appreciate them for sure. It's definitely worth it but it's good.
It's a very good point. My condolences to you and your loss. And I think about it, and it brings up something else that I've been working on now. A couple of, and I think I may have told this, but a couple of in February, one of my clients, actually my largest client, um, the owner of the business passed away, and kind of succession plan. And I don't want to say this the wrong way, but it was kind of up in the air how things were, who's running things, how things are being taken care of now. Um, But I learned two things from this, from the process of dealing with them to help them through the process. One, we are very, very valuable to our customers, right? And essentially, you know how you say you run a business and you know where all, as the business owner, you know where all the bodies are buried. When you manage tech for someone and you've done it for a while, you manage their business, you know where everything is and you know how everything runs. And I think it's important for us to not only recognize that fact, but to embrace it, right? Meaning you do things the right way always, but documentation and paying attention to what goes on with the client goes a long way, because I've had to really help this client through the people who are now running the business through a lot to get them on track, really, because everything was kind of locked up with with the owner at present time. Now the second lesson I got from that is this: for those of us who are solopreneurs, who are small businesses, it is very important, and I know we've discussed this before, but you should have some kind of succession plan in line on paper for just various things. If I always used to joke about it before, say this is my if in case I get hit by a bus scenario. But the fact of the matter is, who in your organization can get to all of the things that you have access to? Who can make sure that your clients, think about it, if something happens to you, you still have clients that need to be serviced. So can someone in your office service these clients, and do they know where everything is that information readily shared? So this is something to keep in mind. Not only have a succession plan for if you're sick or if you're unfortunately leave before your time, but that's very important. And it's in your business, but it also that's also something we should have in life, because we have a lot of things that happen in it the same way. If you don't have things in order in business, 9 times out of 10 you probably don't have that same plan and available in life, and you can leave your loved ones in a pinch too. So I just think that's something, I want to sound morbid, but planning is very important. So I just think we should all keep that in mind. Now, moving on to today's topic, bring us up a little bit. Vendor breakups when staying costs more than leaving. Now, we had several conversations about how to choose your vendor, choosing tools, what's right, what's wrong, why do you choose vendors? But the topic has come up that sometimes it is time to go. And I'm gonna say I've reached my boiling point with some certain things that are going on. And me, who I think I would label myself as very patient, I've just reached a point where, and maybe it's just with old age, that I don't have that level of patience anymore, or that level of wait. So I wanted to just discuss what are some of the, I guess maybe we look at this in two ways. What are some of the things that we should be looking out for to tell us it's time to go? And then two, how do you manage that process? So I'll let either one of you start if you want. I see the smiles on your face. And keep in mind, I'm sorry, cut you off. We don't have to be specific about any vendor or any situation if you don't want to. That's your choice.
Man, I'm scared to step out here, man, because I'm feeling that you got some personal situation going on there that you want to get out, right? I don't know what it is, but I'm sure it's coming. I look at a vendor, man. It's tough for us because we run our vendors and they're critical to the support of our businesses and where it comes from, and we really lean on them hard. And so it's one of those things where we didn't get into that relationship, kind of lackadaisical, right? We did the due diligence, we did what we did, we were committed to do some things, and things fall short. But I always believe that we have to be reevaluating if we want to make sure we're establishing best in class. And we may have the best in class, but also remember that they have to step up and say, hey, here's the new things that we're working on. Here's the new pricing we're working on. Here's how we're doing it. Here's how we're going to ultimately continue to support you and grow your business. Anytime that those three legs don't stand up, then I believe that's time to move on. Because at the end of the day, you get tired, and obviously it cannot be a coincidence that it's May 2nd which means that we probably got a call from that vendor last week saying, "Hey, you want to do something, but I haven't heard from you at all."
Mhm.
That's when you start to see that, hey, the relationship is not probably where you want to go and where you want to be. And if it's not meeting the needs and there's something best in class or trying to figure out how to get there, I think it's definitely time to evaluate how it works and where it's time to go. And also getting the support from your team and saying, how has it been on cases? How has it been on communicating with them? How's it been on getting the support? Is it harder? Is it that they're not available to us anymore? And it's that time to move on because we can't afford having to wait in that situation. We spend a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money, and we expect a certain level of response based on what we do.
Paco, any
How about yourself, Mr. Smith? What it sounds like you got something you got to get off your. No, I mean, I think for when you look at this type of scenario, right, and every MSP should be auditing their vendors, if not annually, at least every 6 months to a quarter. Um, just because technology changes, right? This is why I don't like signing annual agreements because technology changes so much. I always try to go month to month or with month to month with an annual commit so that I can prove and they can prove to me that they are doing what they're supposed to do. Now, there's a term that, I met with a couple local MSPs probably about a month ago now. And there's this term, we've always talked about it, but this term that was said, and I've started to adopt it more and more, is hands in pocket, which how do you limit the amount of hands in your pocket when running your business and keep what's in your pockets? So what the metaphor for those that don't understand is, how do you make sure that the money you make, you keep it into your account and it's not being spent on all types of tools, process, things of that nature? So it allows you to do two things. It allows you to be a little bit creative, and it allows you to kind of think outside of the box. I think a lot of times, especially for those starting out, we seek advice on how to run our business and what vendors we should work with. But oftentimes, I think we just kind of go with the flow and what's kind of what the market is letting us know about. And so we tend to fall into these traps, right? And sometimes they're for good, sometimes they're for bad. And so, oftentimes you make out with you make the most out of what situation you're in, right? Um, and so when you look at this, you have to understand, is it truly making me money? And when you really dissect that and understand, is that partner really helping you for what it's supposed to be? You have to determine, am I just doing what I can to make this solution work, or is this solution working for me? So that's one way of looking at it. There's another way of looking at it where, is there things that I already have? And this is an argument I have with Rick all the time for many, many years, is
discussion?
the debate,
Okay.
constructive feedback, where if there's a vendor or tool that gains attention, my first question, because this is what Jeff Hallish, former host of this podcast and the Computer Repair Podcast, would tell me, is there something that you already have that can do what you're trying to buy? Not better, not prettier, but can it do those core functions? And if it can, why can't that work? And so if you can't answer those questions, then there's probably not a good reason why you should take that um, product on, vendor, solution, service, things of that nature. The other side of it is, when you look at that and you ask that same question, is, are the benefits going to be better or worse if you did make the switch and you stayed? Sometimes we get lured in with
Shiny
promises, I
objects.
guess is the way is to say it. And you can only go so long. There was a vendor, so probably what, 7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, there was a vendor that we were with, and they would always say, yes, it's going to come out in the next release. Sometimes the products they suggest would almost take a year and a half to 2 years for it to come out for that release. So we switched because, empty promises of integrations or things that we needed fundamentally, that when we signed, yeah, it's going to be in the next release in 3 months. And it turned out it was going to be in 6 releases later, tended to become a problem for us. And so, John Dubinsky, when he was over at the Maven Group, this same vendor actually cost him a client that he signed on with because he was promised one thing. They said it would have it by this date, and they didn't. And he tried to kind of keep bay that client that he just signed on with, and they couldn't wait anymore. And it was a compliance requirement. So, he lost a client. He ended up having to switch, and there were other things from that vendor that made us switch too. And it just to a point where sometimes, again, staying is going to cost you more than you actually leaving. And, some of us are probably going through that right now with some vendors. And so these are the different ways of looking at that of, all right, well, what are you guys talking about? Like, switching from a vendor, um, everyone talks about that every time. And yeah, we've talked about, how much does it cost to switch from a vendor on a monetary gain or on a throughput, but they don't really look at the underlying issues of effort, time, or in this case, lack of functionality that's causing you more harm than good to make your job easier. So that's kind of where my professional way of saying of that realm. But sounds like you got some stuff to get off your chest, Mr. Rick. What do you got going on over there that you wanted to bring up this topic? And you're on mute, so why don't you go ahead and let us know? You're on mute, I said, my friend.
I'm so excited I couldn't even wait. I just said, get your popcorn out. I got a story to tell. No, but seriously, I'm not going to get into specifics, but what I am going to say is this. The most important commodity we have is time. It is our most important commodity. The point, in my opinion, the reason we use any tools or any vendors is to help us save time, right? Save time, help us increase our revenue, and be more efficient. That's the whole reason we use any tool. Otherwise, we'll still use, write it down on paper. So when you find that the time that it takes to do what the tool is supposed to do is costing you more, it's time to go. And it is, we have these conversations with our vendors all the time. Vendors, some of them, and I don't want to cast this on every vendor because there are some great vendors out there. And there are some vendors who are learning their way, let me say, that are not, for lack of a better term, are not intentionally deceptive, but you don't necessarily always get all of the facts, right? Or you get the whole story, or you get told what you want to hear. And sometimes that can cost you in your business. Paco and I, he's right. We have this debate all the time because I'll ask things and I'll be like, hey, because I'm looking for something I'm looking to fill a gap, and I'll go searching to fill that gap, which brings me all the way to something that does something else. So I'm sprawl. That's the tool sprawl, right? I'm sprawling over now. I got two things doing the same thing because I need to fill point C, but because I already had A and B filled, but this vendor only does A, B, and C. So now I got tool sprawl. I'm doing twice as much with the same thing, or you know what I mean by that. And so my point again is this. When you're spending more time trying to solve or constantly making the same call or having the same conversation with your vendor, and they keep telling you the same thing, that is insanity, right? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And when you ask your vendor or they promise you something or they tell you something's coming, you're patient enough to wait. You want to work with them, you like them, whatever. Again, we do business with people we know, like, and trust, right? So for some reason, they've garnered those three factors from us, and we're doing business with them. But when it comes to a point where the trust portion erodes, as Corey talked about the three legs of the stool, right? As the trust portion erodes, you start now to lose patience. You start to lose the desire to work with them anymore, right? Because now, if I told you I'm going to do something over and over again and it doesn't happen, you stop to forget about all the things I'm doing right because you're focusing on what I'm telling you. That I'm continuously not fulfilling for you. It's the same thing we have to keep in mind with our clients, and I always try to treat the relationship with our clients exactly the way I want a vendor to treat me, right? So when that cost, and as Paco talked about, there's the cost of, I think the cost of what a tool cost you is the least of is the least of your expenses. When it starts to erode your time, erode your confidence, erode your trust, that's a huge cost. And that is when it's time, in my opinion, to say it's time to move on. So I run into that scenario with the vendor, who has, I think, and I'll say this with all honesty, I think for the most part started out um, really wanting to do and trying to do the right thing. And I think as time has gone on, what has happened is you begin to overpromise and underdeliver because you constantly want to tell me it's coming, wait. And it's not necessarily about, I'm not gonna, my business is not gonna fall apart if you don't deliver this when you say you're gonna deliver it. But my trust erodes from you when you say you're gonna deliver something and you constantly push it back, or it just doesn't happen anymore. And that is more so of the the bigger issue I'm looking at. I don't want to make this just any longer than I need to, but that is for me where I lose the confidence, and then from there, you've lost me really as a client or as an advocate.
Man, what I love about what you said, man, is that we are in our time is money, and what we do is money. And what you're doing is it's not a personal decision, it's a business decision, right? Because I look at the vendors and everything else, they're like your employees, right? You got to make sure that we're clicking on all wheels and looking at from there. Because if you're on the defense trying to go figure out whatever it is, that's taking you away from running your business, from selling your business, from moving forward with your business. And it makes you question that, hey, I don't want to go sell nothing because I got this issue that if I go bring on a bigger client or another client, that I'm going to push that issue into there, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse because it just keeps growing. It expands, right? But what you're having, man, is what I love is you're having a business conversation, a business thought about that process, because your time is money. Obviously, they're not respecting the time that we got to get in there. They don't treat it as your time is money because I got to stay on the phone with you. I'm addressing the issue over and over again. And it's exactly what our customers feel as well, right? Is if I got to call you every day about this printer, I got a problem with this printer, right? You've been telling me go swap the printer out, and you go get something done, but I got the same problem. But I love what you're having, man, is taking the emotion out of it and saying, this is a business conversation. This is killing me on multiple aspects. I have to make a change. Because if I don't, it's going to have a bigger impact on me down the road. So I love the conversation. I think it's the right place and the right time to do that.
Yeah, I mean, there's this thing about, right, where personal and business, right? And I think a lot of people tend to be personal in their business, right? Being emotional with your business may oftentimes cause you to lose money. And I say that because when you become emotional with a vendor, when you get emotional with a partner, you're trying to make it work, right?
Yeah.
There was a platform we were on before, a couple years ago, where I personally loved the platform. It worked for me. I was a lifer of this platform, and my team just could not grasp the ability to communicate in this platform. Balls were getting dropped. They couldn't figure out how to communicate with each other. The right hand sometimes wouldn't talk to the left hand, and so it became a burden for the team. But because of my emotional state with this platform, I had probably stayed 2 years longer than I probably should have. And that's just because, again, I was emotional with the platform and the people at that business, and just how long we were a partner of it, not understanding that it was detrimenting my business because my team just were not fans of the platform and could not understand, or not so much understand, but couldn't work through the pain points that we just kept stumbling and causing us to look elsewhere. What I will end off and caution those is, there's a saying where people say, you love, or Rick, you corrected me last time when I said that, when we last talked, is people love doing business with people they like, and people don't like to be sold to, people like to buy.
Right.
And so what I would caution about that saying is that oftentimes in our space, you never know where that platform will probably land and how it may transition and change in ownership. People that you work with all the time could flip out into different companies. And so oftentimes, I remember, I think it was probably what, three, maybe like 4 years ago. Good friend of mine who was a rep joined this one company. I was like, hey, I'm all about it. Let me go ahead and go all in on it. Joined the board. We were having great time. It was a great product. It looked great. And then I don't know what happened, but essentially there were some back end things that were going on. And then my buddy ended up, he was actually supposed to speak at a TechCon, ended up leaving the company 2 weeks before that he was supposed to appear. Then a lot of the things started changing on what the product was offering, and it fell away from what it was doing. And so when I jumped in, it was like, hey, this is a great mission, this is great. But really, it was because of my buddy that was on there. And so when you do business with people you like, understand that if they're not the owner of that business, or if they don't have any ownership, or there's any tangibility to it, if they leave, are you going to be happy with that solution? Or did you just join because you had a great relationship and there was big impact that you could have at that business, right? And so that's burned me a couple times throughout my career. And so that's something to take into effect, where yes, do business with people you like, but oftentimes those people may move on. And so are you going to be happy with the solution you're with? And are you going to gain the same input that you had before that when they were in there as well? So those are some things to take cautious with as well.
Right.
You know,
And then, go
I
ahead.
love that. No, I love it. And I always tell, even when we offboard customers and where we come from that perspective, we offboarded a partner that was us. I think we got in too early, and we kind of went through that process. And so we offboarded, and then we eventually came back, and they're now our partner that we do things with now. So I would say is, as you go down that path, you have to be open, be honest, be upfront, and end the relationship on good terms, because you want to have the opportunity to come back, and things change and where it goes. And one of the things that I love what Paco said is, one of the things I always love about this community is it's such a tight knit that it's a good thing and a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
Because you you be like, man, I don't want this partner no more, right? You be like, yeah, I'm moving over here, and then you go to sleep, wake up, and the person that was over at the other company is now at the new company, and you're like, oh, what do I do with that, right? And they're telling you all the cool stuff that they were talking bad about the other company last week about, right?
Yeah,
It's like, yeah,
right.
where to go? So
Yep.
that's the piece of the community that's so cool, that is just like, it's a good thing and a bad thing. But I always say is just be open and honest up front as you lay it down, so you can always come back later and pick it up, because it do get better. It does get changed. An acquisition happens, right? We see a lot of consolidation, but you're making a business decision, and
Right.
and I think that's the piece, is you're saying, I might like you, we may have a great relationship, we may do what we got to get done, but from a business perspective, this is hurting me. I got to go do something to do change, because that's what I'm tasked to go do. And I love that. That's the piece where we got to get to. Not personal, it's business.
Right.
Yeah. and I've been there before. Like it's funny. You reminded me. There was a rep at another company they jumped on. They were like, oh yeah, this, and we're a longtime partner of this company they were talking smack about, and they were like, oh yeah, it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. It's like whatever. And then they ended up leaving the company they were with to go back to that company that they had previously were in, and they were like, oh yeah, I totally was wrong when I said all that stuff. It's like, all this, I was like, you're so full of, you know what? So yeah, like you said, it's always interesting to have those conversations, and technology's changed too, right? And so a vendor that maybe you were so hard pressed that you would never do business with, they may have changed the tune, had a CEO replaced, and figuring out what your next move is from there.
Right.
I always say, man, you gotta trust your spidey senses, man. When you get that spidey sense out there and it's going, I can't tell you how many times I ignore it and that shit bites me in the butt, right? It bites me in the butt big time. But you gotta honor your spidey senses, man, and then reach out to the circle of friends, man, and say, hey, this is what I'm feeling. Because it's probably true. It's probably right. You're at that place. Because I know you well enough to know that it didn't just come overnight, right? It wasn't you woke up and said, you know what? I think I'm going to change out today, right? You did the thing, right? So I trust that spidey sense, man, for sure.
I mean, because the truth is, I mean, the other side of this is changing vendors is a pain in the ass, right?
Really
there's a serious opportunity cost is lost. There's a lot of work that's involved in it. Not only for just it's not pushing a button. You know what I mean? It's not just pushing a button and say, today I'm on vendor A, on vendor X, tomorrow I'm on vendor Y. I just push the button and it all just works out. There's that transition period. There's, depending on what it is, there's a learning curve for you, for your staff. There is, just repositioning how your stack works, all of those things come into play when you do this. So this is not something you should take, haphazardly or just, do. I tried to make, and, we all go to shows all year and you get calls from vendors all the time. And I'm upfront with them. Hey, we always evaluate things, but we try not to change anything for a year. So we try to do everything in the fourth quarter is when we evaluate and see what worked for us, what didn't. And, at that point, if we think there's some things that we may need to change, then we'll evaluate another process to see if that works for us. That's why, again, having some kind of getting some kind of ramp up or some kind of trial or whatever it may be is important, just because it may look good for Paco, but when Rick tries to implement it, it doesn't work. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or, Corey loves this and it does exactly what 5K Technical Services does, but Prodigy Text doesn't work that way. And those are the things we have to keep in mind as well. And, when you come to a point where it's the middle of the year or it's a spur of the moment decision, it is when you're basically, I guess, your water has boiled over and you have to do it immediately. But make no doubt about it. If you can, I would say, even though I guess the saying is be slow to hire and quick to fire. I think that's the way they say it, right? Be slow to hire, quick to fire. And it makes sense because when you have cancer, the best thing to do is to cut it out as fast as possible. And I'm sorry to use that analogy, but when you have a sickness or you have something that is eroding the whole process, you need to cut that out as soon as possible so it doesn't spread, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, that is not an easy task to take on, midstream. And so I say make the decision carefully, evaluate it if you can. If it doesn't make things worse, to hold out until it to the timing is right, and do it that way. But if not, move on. Don't let it fester to the point where you're frustrated, your employees are frustrated, your clients are frustrated, and then you make a rash decision
Right.
that even makes it worse for you. So,
Right. And especially for principal, like, there's this other part that we didn't talk about where sometimes you leave a vendor due to principle and it doesn't align with what your beliefs are, or just they're asshole vendors. And they're they treat their own staff like garbage, or even worse, their partners. And so there's someone that just don't care, and they're going to continue to keep doing what they do with their own policies, and it just doesn't align with what you believe fundamentally as a business. And so that's okay too. That's okay to stick to your guns and say, hey, look, you know what, you're just not for us. We just don't align with what you guys, how you guys do business. It's nothing personal other than my own personal beliefs, and we wish you well, but
Mhm.
go over on that row, on that aisle of the booths, and we're gonna go over here, and don't we'll talk, hopefully we won't talk again. So there's sometimes that you have that type of situation as well, that you have to make that clean cut discussion, because there's pillars and there's principles that you've established for your business and your staff and your team, and you don't want to go against that as well. Same as what you would do with clients.
Exactly. And so I just will say this: when it's time, it's time, and you need to recognize the signs. When the support is not there, that may be something. When they're not keeping their word, that may be something. And the truth is, sometimes stuff just doesn't work, right?
Yep.
Like it's supposed to. And when it don't work, you spend more time trying to fix it than it's worth to you, right? So that, again, that costs you more than staying. I mean, that costs you more than leaving, staying, trying to constantly fix it. It's like, I don't know. They use duct tape for everything, but if you got to keep fixing stuff with duct tape every day and rolling more duct tape, it's time to just cut the line and get a new line, right? So
Paper clips and bubble gum is what we used to say in my old job. Paper clips and bubble gum.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the way I look at it. So when you're thinking about it, I'll sum it up with this, and I'll let you guys give some last thoughts before we wrap this up. But I'll sum it up and say, recognize the signs, pay attention to the signs, don't ignore them, and don't let a small problem become a huge problem. And keep your emotions out of it.
I would add on to keep your emotions on it, but again, if you have your personal principles, stick with your principles. Don't change that for nobody. And whether it's a client, a vendor, or even a colleague that has happened to lost his mind, do that.
Hey, it's not you, it's me.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. We just don't align anymore, baby. I'm going in a different direction.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's important for all of us to just keep in mind as we run a business. And I think some great points have been mentioned here. So as we wrap up, I will remind everyone, we want to thank you first and foremost for listening to us, and we'll remind you that you can catch us every week here on our YouTube channels, MSP Unplugged. YouTube.com/MSP Unplugged. You can also catch us on the go, because I know these guys, they definitely got a face for radio. So you can catch us on the go. We're on your favorite podcatcher apps. That's Amazon Music, Spotify, just to name a few. For Corey, Paco, and myself, I want to thank you. Remember to get your tickets for for TechCon Unplugged for June 20th in Chicago. And for the guys here, I want to thank you, and we'll see you next time on MSP Unplugged.